coward Gorm flees. His father dies today.
You serious?
Ubisoft games, especially Assassin's Creed, are known for being kind of broken and janky. And in a year with a pandemic, I'm surprised that the game was released at all. But nonetheless, it didn't do the game any favors. Now, there are a lot of things that I like about this title. I'm only 10 hours in, but there are some things, unfortunately, on the technical side that aren't up to par. And again, that is nothing new when it comes to Ubisoft games, and it is nothing new with Assassin's Creed. Now, the main issue that I had, of course, I'm playing this on an Xbox One X. I had it at full 4K UHD. The console was standing up. It is in an open area and had plenty of airflow. But unfortunately, that doesn't seem to stop this game from overheating the Xbox One console itself. Now, I know that the other game that released recently, Watch Dogs Legions, also had this issue, and it's unfortunate because I was in the middle of playing. The game froze for just a moment, and then it just shut the console off completely. Now, when I turned it back on, it didn't say anything about it being overheated, but prior to that, I could hear the fan in the console revving itself up, and generally the Xbox One X that I have, I've had it since March, and it is generally always really quiet, especially during gameplay. And I've played games like Doom Eternal that really push the console. Other games, of course, like Gears 5, and just overall, all the 4K and all the Xbox One X enhanced games that I could get my hands on, none of them really forced the console's fan up as high as Assassin's Creed has. Now, aside from the game obviously crashing and causing the console to just completely shut off, the game itself is very technically unpolished. It does have persistent frame dips, and there is a terrible, absolutely terrible screen tearing issue going on. I don't know if the screen tearing is going to be relayed in the gameplay footage, but when playing on my 4K monitor, even lowering the resolution down to 1080p, the screen tearing is absolutely horrible. Hopefully, they can get a patch out soon to fix this. Now, some of the good things that I do like, the combat has received some enhancements. Now, when using a bow and arrow and targeting an enemy, you get yellow glowing points on the body model, and these are their weak points. Now, if you're able to successfully shoot them with the bow and arrow, you'll then completely cripple the enemy, and then you can move in for the killing blow. Now, the combat that I've dealt with so far has only been with the axe, and I'm not exactly sure what the name of the weapon is. It's like a mace, but instead of being a big ball and chain at the end of it, it just simply has a giant spike. And the combat is varied. The combat's okay. It's different and a little bit more direct than it was previously in the other games. The other games gave you a huge amount of different types of weapons, from spears to axes to swords. And while some of that stuff does exist in the game, I have yet to really get any weapons outside of the axe that you start the game with. Now, outside of the combat, so far, what I have experienced within the first 10 hours of Assassin's Creed, the gameplay is pretty similar. You sneak through areas, and for the first couple of hours, you actually don't have the ability to assassinate anybody. You receive that once a event in the story happens, and I'm not going to have any spoilers here in the story, but just be aware that even though you don't have the assassinate ability from the beginning, it is something that you acquire pretty early on. Now, the map is also different in the way that you explore and pick up key items, whether it's a treasure, gear, and or other side quests that pop up within the world. And these are noted by giant beams of light that are shooting up from the ground that you can then use your Raven to mark, and then you can go to them from there. Of course, the gear system is slightly different as well. You're not being bombarded with different gear pieces, different weapons, different chest armor, legs, and helmet pieces like you were, especially in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Assassin's Creed Odyssey really went for that RPG flavor with the rare, legendary, and common gear. And of course, Assassin's Creed Valhalla has some of that, it seems, but it is a lot less. The focus is a lot less on gear now and seems to either be on exploration and story or the combat that ends up coming up when moving from area to area and story beat to story beat. These are just my first general overall impressions. I really am enjoying it. I really do like the exploration, and the combat is kind of the same as it has been before, but outside of getting more weapons, which I'm waiting to get maybe some swords to find out exactly the depth of the combat, it's pretty similar to what you've played before. The skill tree, however, is extremely different than what we've had previously. This gives you the ability to go off in many different directions and customize your character like you want. It does something weird though. Instead of offering you the ability to just straight up improve yourself on combat or on stealth or on ranged weapons, you can move from node to node and put your experience points into these different abilities and different perks that you can get. But there's no one set path that you could just play all stealthy. If you go through the stealth line from the beginning, eventually you will run into nodes that upgrade your different abilities, such as your strength or your damage with one-handed weapons, your sneak ability, and your range ability. It seems that even though they have their own paths, there's still plenty of the abilities littered throughout each branch that you're moving through. In an effort to avoid the game crashing my console, I have currently moved it from my 4K monitor to my 1080p TV in the hopes that it won't be so stressful on the Xbox, or at least it'll be better optimized for 1080p instead of 4K. Overall, though, with my first impressions, I cannot recommend that you buy this, just due to the detriment that it could cause to your console, because now I am also noticing that the fan seems to be running higher, even on games that aren't Assassin's Creed Valhalla. But as always, don't forget, in order to be part of the conversation and have your voice heard, hit that subscribe button and leave me a comment in the section down below. If you guys are playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, let me know if you've been running into any of these issues as well. But until next time, everyone, thank you all for joining me here today. If you guys are new around here, check out some of my previous videos. I upload content weekly. And don't forget to check out the links in the description.